Well, on behalf of the family, I just want to thank you. And we're here to Peterson, wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, friend. And as we put it together, as we really started to see how it came together, we realized maybe we should have called it a legacy service. And I think you'll see what we mean by that. I just want to give you a brief history of Mom and a few personal thoughts. And then each person's going to come up and the next thing will happen. There won't be any introduction. Mom was born in 1933, grew up in a Christian family. Her father died when she was 9. Her family was very poor. Mom used to say that they were the family that the church would bring food and clothes and things like that and drop them at the door because of their poverty. As a young person, Mom recognized the need for a Savior, the sin in her life, and trusted in the finished work of Jesus on the cross. Christ took her sin to the cross, and she was given his righteousness. She met Dad at a young adult's inspiration. They were married in 1956. In the following year, they were blessed with an amazing gift from God. In the early years, as the family was growing, Mom and Dad were committed to following Christ. And they sought a good church home, and they became actively involved in that church. In 1971, they were committed to lead the security of a good job, new home, 2 new cars, and take a 90% pay cut to move to Schroon Lake and serve the Lord. And days after committing to come to Word of Life, Darren was diagnosed with leukemia at 4 years old. It's important to understand that the experience of bad news is not what caused my parents to turn to the Lord. Their experience was a platform for their faith. It gave them a platform to demonstrate to others what it meant to follow Christ. And even though the path was difficult and that the path was confusing and painful, Mom and Dad were committed to being faithful. Mom says that the night before they heard the diagnosis, as they sat in their bedroom, she said, "Let's remember that tomorrow 4 boys will be watching how we respond to the news." And little did they understand the impact that that would have on the 4 of us. Also, little did they know that hundreds of people would be watching them, and that in time, many, many people would hear of their faith and would be challenged. This is important. Throughout the years, Dad was the public voice. And so often we think of Dad as being the key player. And over the years we've discussed it, especially in the last few days, the discussions I've had with Dad, it's really important for him to understand that together they decided to leave the security of Cincinnati. Together, they accepted the diagnosis of leukemia. Together, they made the various changes in their lifestyle for greater ministry. Multiple times they sized down. And Dad always says, how many people would be willing to walk with their spouse into those challenging steps? After Mom died, we learned something about Mom that we really didn't know. I just got a message, so I like praying for you. So anyway, should have turned my Wi-Fi off. After Mom died, we learned something about Mom. People began to write us and tell us of the impact that she had. Dad and I were talking about some of the stories that we heard. We had no idea, and I said to Dad, we didn't know she was having those conversations. And some of you are here today because of personal conversations you had with Mom that just were never mentioned. But ultimately, Mom focused on her family. And as I think you'll see, she had a distinctive relationship with each person in her family. I think one of the most profound things about Mom, too, is that she was a great mother-in-law. She loved her daughters like her own children. In fact, when people would say to me, "How does your wife get along with your mom?" I would always answer, "They like her better than me." Her daughter-in-laws were her friends and confidants. Wendell Kempton once said to me that Mom and Dad are like conduits. They connect people with resources to projects. And the reason they're able to do that is because none of it sticks. They didn't reap any of the benefits. I'd like you to walk away from here today to just understand that 50 years ago, Mom and Dad Dad was a businessman and Mom was a homemaker in Cincinnati, and God, through a series of experiences, thrust them into a limelight. But every single person in this room can be faithful to family and influence the next generation. And I would just like to challenge you to let Mom's life be a challenge to you. There's going to be 3 songs this morning. First, Mom's favorite song is "In the Garden." She told us 2 or 3 days before she died that was her favorite song. Second is the song "Our God is in Control," written by Don Wurtzen. This is a special song to our family because Dad was giving his testimony in 1971, or 72, at a Christian Businessmen's Committee. And Don was there taking notes, and he went to his room and wrote this song. I wrote Don after Mom died and said, "Is there any way we could get that orchestration that you did?" And so he gave me Steve Bolt's email address, and so Steve Bolt sent CDs for the family and for us to play this morning, so you hear it the way Don intended for it to be heard. And the last song will be "Finally Home," written by Don Wurtzen, one of Mom's favorites, and one that she would always say to me, "Would you play either Ring the Bells or Finally Home?" So I'll play one verse as one last time for Mom. And Don will sing "In the Garden." Don Martin will sing "In the Garden" and "Finally Home." Let me pray as we begin. Father, we are just so grateful today for the legacy of Maggie Louise Peterson. And we just thank you for us as family to have a front row seat of a person who just stayed faithful. And we just thank you for that. Father, I thank you for the friends that came today. It's so overwhelming. People here represent every stage of life, and we are just so grateful to them. Pray that you'd bless them. Pray that you would be honored and glorified above Mom, but that we would honor her. In Jesus' name, amen.
My favorite memory of Grandma would have to be when I took my solo trip out to Dallas to visit Grandma and Grandpa, and the staggering amount of Jamocha milkshakes that I asked her to make me.
I went to Dallas by myself, obviously, and she bought me this Jason Kidd Dallas Mavericks jersey. Amazing. Second favorite memory, when we were in Argentina, we went out to get ice cream, and Grandma ordered some ice cream without tasting it. And Grandpa was like, "You should probably taste it." And she said, "No, Bruce, I'm gonna like it." Then she got it, and she hated it, and she stood up and went to the trash can and threw it out.
My favorite memory of Grandma is when we used to go down to Dallas every year for spring break over Easter. I loved spending time in their house. I loved sleeping in the purple room and getting all dressed up for Easter. I loved all the fancy things that we did for Easter. I loved going downtown with them to church and just spending time with them.
My favorite memory was probably one of Grandma's favorite memories with me. When I was little, she was cooking me dinner, and I said, "Grandma, I didn't know you knew how to cook."
All of the vacations and cruises we took together, but the one standout was the Disney cruise where the girls played a nonstop game of Rook.
when Maggie and I were little and we were at Screen Lake, Grandma would call us to the bottom of the steps and she would have little baggies of grapes and she would toss them down the steps for us.
Is once after a disaster solo on my trumpet in church, I sat back down, Mom handed me a note, I opened it up and it said, "I still love you."
Grandma gave me like cookies.
Before Cole was born, Kristen and I got to spend a week with Grandpa and Grandma in Dallas, and it was so much fun.
When I was about 12, I got to fly down to spend a week with Grandma and Grandpa in Dallas. And Grandma and I took one day, and we stayed in our pajamas all day, and we watched movies, and we ate a whole entire watermelon. About 6 years later, when I was about 19, Grandma had surgery, and Grandpa had to travel, and so he flew me down to take care of Grandma that week. And we chose one day when we stayed in our pajamas, we watched movies all day, and we ate a whole nother watermelon.
My favorite memory with Grandma is watching her put her makeup on in the bathroom. I would do it at her house, my house, even after I was married, and it was just a sweet time.
I remember when Grandma taught me to play Chinese checkers. Is that we used to go out to breakfast and have pancakes with lingonberries.
FaceTime call during camp in the last week that she was alive, and I was drinking Starbucks, and it was one of the few times when she actually knew what was going on at that point, and she said to me, "Emily, I think Starbucks owns you."
It's when we went to Cracker Barrel with her and had biscuits with jelly of all types of flavor and butter.
Is visiting her and Grandpa in Dallas with Ashley after we got married.
Me and my family went to stay in their house in Florida, and me and Grandma just talked for an hour straight. And I don't usually do that, but I did it with her, and that's my favorite memory.
When I fed Grandma on her shoulder.
Favorite memory is just sitting on the edge of her bed and talking to her. She'd tell tons and tons of stories. In those stories, there were always lessons that she had learned in that. Anything from just letting things go, making sure that family is more important than anything else.
I remember one day she came home from the store. She was very upset. She said, "There's something wrong with my glasses. My eyes are going. I need to make a doctor's appointment." And I said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "I can't see properly." And I said, "Mom, why don't you take your glasses off and look at them for a second?" What had happened is her left lens had fallen out of her glasses, and she'd been running errands and driving around all day, going through drive-thrus and shopping with only one lens in her sunglasses. And she never figured out that the reason she couldn't see very well is because she only had one lens in her sunglasses.
I was trying to think of my favorite memory of my mom, and I really couldn't come up with one. But what I decided on was Christmas. My mom loved Christmas. She loved family. Seeing her with my children and my grandchildren each Christmas was incredibly special.
I like Minnie Mouse pancakes with Grandma.
My favorite memory of Grandma is when I was dating Nicole and things started getting serious. She took me aside, just her and I, to talk. I remember the family actually was really scared what she was going to say. Because of the fact that she was always so honest, and all it was really is she just wanted to know my intentions, and I saw a tender grandma that welcomed me into the family and gave me good advice.
One of my favorite memories with Mom was when they took us on a cruise, and we were obsessed with the game Rook, and we played it so much that when we got off the cruise ship and visited Epcot for the day, we stood in line with our cards in our pockets, pulled them out every chance we could to finish the games we were playing.
Flying down to Dallas for a week to visit her and Grandpa. It was the first time I was away from home like that, first time I was on an airplane. I remember being really scared to be in that environment, but the second I saw Grandma, she welcomed me in. I went running over to her, and for the next week, she took care of me like I was one of her own. She tucked me in at night, she prayed with me, she made me meals. I felt like a child, not like a grandchild, and I felt loved and blessed to have been there.
I remember with great grandmas playing pie fights with them. It was so fun.
My favorite memory with Grandma was when Cambry, my oldest, was about 1 year old, and my mom and I got to go down and just spend a weekend, a girls' weekend with her. And Grandpa wasn't around, but I think he did come home early from a trip because he thought we were having too much fun without him. But we went out for dinner, and we stayed in our pajamas till late in the morning, and we watched movies together and went shopping together. And it was just fun to be with her and spend time with her laughing without an agenda.
When I went to college with my mother-in-law, she signed us up for a Microsoft Word class. So we went down to Adirondack Community College just a few years ago, and we had so much fun.
Her and Grandpa came to visit Luke and I at our apartment, and we had pizza with them, and it was the first time that they saw our apartment that we had together. And so it was really a special memory to have them in our living room and talk with them for a couple hours and just have that time with them while they were in town.
We would just sit on the couch and talk after dinner. But yeah, we would share stories and little bits of wisdom from her, filled with laughter always.
Just before we moved to New York and I was in high school, there was a TV show called Medical Center, and so whenever it was on, all the brothers would go to bed and I would stay up, and it was kind of our show. Dad would be out of town, and it was always a pretty big deal, kind of like a date night.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go through the voice of woe, his voice
I'm super excited because I got to go after the Memories video in that song. So this should be a lot of fun to get going. Memories are funny. It's funny how people can remember the same event in different ways. When we get together as a family, it's interesting the thing that my family remembers because there's so many things that I cannot remember, mostly because I'm the youngest and a lot of fun things happened before I came along. But I've heard the story of how Mom once tried to go outside to play with my brothers and tripped and broke her ankle stepping off the porch. And so I don't remember her ever trying to come out and play with me and my friends. But one of my favorite memories is one time my mom and dad and I, we were traveling to Glens Falls, and my mom said, on the way there, she said, let's remember to get fuses for the thing. And Dad very graciously said, Maggie, I have no idea what you're talking about. Mom was convinced that Dad was mocking her, but on the way home, all of a sudden Dad said, oh man, I forgot batteries for the remote control. And Mom looked at him and said, I told you on the way down, you never listened to me. But for me, my earliest memories of Mom, here we go, actually have to do with my leukemia. I don't remember waking up with the bruise on my cheek. Excuse me. I don't remember the first time I was told I had leukemia. I do remember the difficulty Mom and Dad had in finding a doctor. We went all through Albany Medical Center talking to several doctors, and I remember just being dragged in and out of a doctor's office, not really understanding what was going on. I don't remember my first bone marrow, but I remember my last. And I remember that I didn't cry when I was reading this earlier. But I remember that Mom was there for each and every one of them. As I reflected on my mom over the past few weeks, I began to realize all the lessons she taught me over the years, and mostly through observing her. The earliest lesson Mom taught me was perseverance. Never give up. I'm here today because of Mom's perseverance. Her perseverance in the face of insurmountable odds has shaped and molded me in ways I had never realized till I began to reflect on our life together. Last week, Anna and I were watching the movie Bolt. One of the characters in the movie is a little hamster in a ball. And my favorite quote that he says is, he looks up and he thinks he's this big superhero, and he looks up and he says, the impossible becomes possible when you're awesome. And I believe with all my heart my mom was awesome. I remember the summer my mom let me go to the ranch with David, and even though Dr. Strauss had said no, I got chicken pox. Chicken pox was very dangerous and life-threatening, and if Mom panicked at all, I never saw it. I remember all the days I missed school because somebody got sick and then got staph infection in the hospital. I spent a week in the hospital and showed no signs of recovery. Mom kept encouraging me, saying, it's okay. You'll start feeling better soon. Just be brave. Years later, Mom shared how my white cell count had dropped dangerously low, and Dr. Strauss was ready to give up. But it was Mom's perseverance that encouraged him to wait one more day. The next day, my white cell count jumped, and I began to recover. To me, integrity means doing the right thing, even though it's difficult. When Samuel fell and had a cut above his eye, I took him to the hospital. While there, I reflected on all those years Mom took me to the hospital. She never missed a treatment, no matter how upset or how sick I was. In fact, one time, Dr. Strauss sent us back home because I was too sick. For 15 years, we got up at 5 and started the long journey, knowing how much pain it would cause for both of us. Recently, in a blog, I shared how she would hold my hand through each treatment and whisper, be brave, it'll be over soon. March 11th, 1987 was my last bone marrow test. It was not supposed to be the last one. I actually had one more scheduled. After the treatment, Dr. Strauss told us I was done. It would be my last treatment. He then looked at Mom and said, Mrs. Peterson, I've decided to retire. They don't make moms like you anymore, and I'm tired of parents who won't follow directions. You always did everything I asked you to do, so today is my last day, and tomorrow I'm retiring. He retired the next day, just like he said. Years later, I took Beth to meet him, and he told her that story, a lesson in integrity, doing the right thing, even when it's difficult, and sometimes even when it doesn't make sense. Faithfulness is another lesson that Mom taught me. In 1979, I had my relapse. At that time, Dad was traveling quite a bit, and the majority of the responsibility for my care fell on Mom's shoulders. And David, we never talked beforehand, but I remember a time I got in trouble at school, and I don't remember what I did, but one of my many, as most of you know, I think Mr. Bowman had a chair in his office just for me. But I don't remember what I did. I just remember at the parent-teacher conference, the teacher, upon realizing that my father was out of town, asked, "When will Bruce be home?" To which my mom replied, "Why? Don't you think I can handle this?" And then Mom said, "You see, Bruce can travel because he knows I know how to handle things here at home, so we don't need to wait for him." See, Mom believed that God called her to be a wife and mother, and that taking care of things at home so my dad could do what he was called to, what God had called him to do. It was never a men are dumb and need a woman to take care of things attitude. She was a godly woman who respected Dad's role as the head of the house and made sure the house was run the same way whether he was home or not. That was really what she was telling my teacher. Bruce and I are one. In his absence, does not make that connection any less secure. That also didn't mean Dad was an absent father. Mom's faithfulness to God's call in her life lessened the impact of Dad's absence. She made sure his presence was always felt. As for Dad's part, remember that when I mentioned my staph infection, Dad was on the road at the time, and I don't know where he was. The only thing I remember is when I woke up the next afternoon in the hospital, Dad was by my side. In that moment, I didn't even remember he was gone. Life lessons taught through my whole life: perseverance, integrity, and faithfulness. Since Mom's passing, I've had an overwhelming sense of peace, knowing she is in the presence of the Lord, whom she loves so dearly. Her testimony reflected her love for our Savior, and it permeated her whole life.
One thing that Grandma always taught me was to make time for the people you love and find ways to make each of them feel really special. She was really good at that.
I think the greatest lesson Grandma taught me is from a Bible that she gave me when I was little. She had marked Psalm 34:1. It says, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." And hearing stories from when the boys were little, and just seeing the woman that Grandma was when I was little and as I got older, just to know that Grandma was a woman of praising the Lord through the hard times and through the good times. And I hope that that's something that I can take from her legacy.
She really taught me that in order to grow in my relationship with God, in order to fight fear and sin, I have to take His word captive in my heart.
How to be a wonderful mother-in-law. I couldn't have asked for a better mother-in-law, and my goal for my kids' spouses is to be as great a mother-in-law as she was.
Lesson from my mom: never settle for last year's technology.
Never to let your husband go out with a wrinkled shirt, because that shows what a wife you are. So I made sure to marry a man who knows how to iron a shirt.
Stay faithful to your husband and walk alongside him as he's following God's leading in his life. And I just think Grandma displayed that really well in her life with Grandpa.
Trust in what God's plan was and is for my life, and face it without fear, and to be brave while going through those steps. And I think she modeled that so well through her life, raising the 4 boys, and then later on with her health issues. She told me not too long ago that she was just trusting the Lord for a each step of the way.
Being honest and being willing to discuss even awkward things. And there was no subject that was off limits in our house. And even the fact that though we were children when Darren had leukemia, we fully understood the ramifications of that. And that has really helped me through the years in counseling families to be honest, to sit down and have frank talks if they need to happen. And I'll always appreciate that.
Grandma taught me a lot of things, but most recently she taught me that it's normal and it's okay to struggle.
You gotta do things even though you don't want to do things. They might not always be easy, but you should do them because it's the right thing to do.
Was to have an undying commitment and love for family.
Be generous.
The greatest lesson my mom taught me is all God expected of me was to just be who I was.
Grandma taught me to follow Jesus wherever he takes her. And I'm obviously here in Canada and learned a lot from that, and I'm really thankful that she taught me that.
To keep fighting no matter what.
The greatest lesson Grandma ever taught me was to treat others the way that you want to be treated.
To never stop praying for someone you care about.
She was compassionate. She really cared about people and she took an interest in them.
Gracie and Maggie were in and out of the hospital a lot all growing up. And I remember many times thinking, I do not know how Grandma did this all the time with Darren. But she did, and she did it with a great attitude. And I thought, if Grandma can do that, then I can do this.
One of the things Grandma taught me is really through her actions. In spite of everything that happened over the years, and the things that Nicole and I went through, she was always welcoming to me. She was always compassionate. She always loved me. And that's something that I definitely want to carry on to other people and display the same love and the same compassion that she showed to me.
Not a specific moment, but just watching her interact with people and how much she cared for other people and how much she devoted her life to sacrificing for others.
Just letting things go, making sure that family is more important than anything else.
I would have to say the lesson that Mom taught me was how to be brave. I just remember all the times in the hospital when she would say to be brave, but for Mom it wasn't just saying be brave. Later on in life when she would overcome obstacles, whether it was her eyes or knee surgery or shoulder surgery or whatever obstacle she had to overcome, she was always very gracious. She was always very much a lady, took things in stride and was brave.
Unlike Darren, I have cried every time I've read my notes. I should have used larger print because everything is blurry. You know, Mom loved technology, and she passed that on to 4 boys. As technologically advanced as my mom is, my dad is just the opposite. I'm suggesting today, Dad, that as you lost tech support, that you work your way from the East Coast to the West Coast for tech support. Here's something interesting. I have not seen in any of these videos before today. I didn't hear what Darren was going to say. I didn't hear what David was going to say. But you're going to constantly hear a common theme in regards to my mom. The incredible thing is, as David mentioned, my mom's father died at the age of 9. And despite the fact, I can't even see. Despite the fact that she didn't grow up in a solid family dynamic, she created an environment of family that few people ever experienced. Dad was the one who set the course, but as he traveled, Mom kept things on track. Although small in stature, she held her 4 boys accountable to Dad's direction. A few years back, we were discussing one of Dad's character-building moments in my life while I was in elementary school. Mom mentioned something about my struggle, and I said to her, how did you know that? Because I was away from the house. She said, I was behind you. We got the 2 most emotional people going back to back. He said, I was behind you. I was far enough behind that you couldn't see me, but I was close enough that I could watch you and make sure that you were okay. She waited 50 years, a half a century, to tell me that. The amazing thing is, in all of Mom's life, she always supported Dad. Never one time. I'm sure there were conversations in private of possibly saying that he might have been a little too hard at times. Never, ever do any of us remember Mom not supporting Dad 100% in his discipline. Drove here, we passed a little home in Schroon Lake at the bottom of this hill. And I remember, how incredibly small it was. And then we moved for a year to the Wayfair Motel. And this is after mentioning that there was that brand new home that she had just left. And I never remember my mom ever one time complaining. So on the way here, I said, Dad, I never heard Mom complain. Did she ever? And he said, absolutely never one time did she ever complain, leaving the lifestyle that she had for what she then had here in Schroon Lake. I think of all the countless trips picking us up from practice and work, wonderful meals. My mom was a wonderful cook. At least by the time I got there, my mom was a wonderful cook. Tons of loads of wash. I just thought the other day, how many for 4 boys, all the loads of wash. Ironing. I didn't know till after I got married that jeans weren't supposed to be ironed. Cleaning, caring for 6 kids, and so much more. She lovingly sacrificed her time for her boys. I never remember my mom withholding anything, including her favorite candy with her 4 boys. We were here over 4th of July as Mom's health was declining. I was here with Lifeline kids, and boy, did my mom love the Lifeline kids. They called her G-Ma. And my wife came to me and said, I want to stay. I want to take care of your mom, and I want to help your dad. What an incredible testimony of my mom's loving relationship with all of her daughter-in-laws. At time, I asked my mom what October 31st meant to her, and she would say it was my birthday. And I would say, that's correct. You gave birth to me, not to Leslie. I remember Mom leaving after our youngest, Emily, was born, and I remember Leslie just sobbing at her going. And Rachel, our oldest, standing in the doorway, blocking the doorway, to say, I will not let you go, I will not let you go. What an incredible testimony of her love. She's crying. Mom made people feel special, whether it was sons, daughter-in-laws, grandchildren and their spouses, or great-grandchildren. She had a special, unique bond with everyone. She mastered the one-on-one connection. She taught us how to love people, especially those who work behind the scenes. She taught her boys to cherish their spouses, to love their children unconditionally, and to find that special bond with them. Being with family brought Mom such joy. But as you look at this Peterson clan and the tightness that we have and the love that we have for each other, the last thing I want to say is, Mom was the glue. Mom was the glue that kept us all so tightly knitted together. Thank you.
When our vision of God is small, our problems seem great inside. So we must believe the Lord with our all, and on Him fix our eyes. Our God is in control. Though pressures burden the soul, He allows both major and minor in His perfect harmony. Oh yes, our God is in control. Oh, pressures burden the soul. His sovereign plan is a symphony which will ring for as we place our faith in the Lord, our worry will decrease. And when we delight ourselves with His word, we sense His perfect peace. Our God is in control. Though pressures burden the soul, He allows both major and minor in His perfect harmony. Oh yes, our God is in control. Though pressures burden the soul, His sovereign plan is a symphony ring for eternity.
Uncle Bruce and family, it is a great honor to share a few thoughts this morning. I'll be very brief, but I want you to know you and your family are very special to me personally, to the Locke family, and representing Word of Life as well. We all love you greatly. I want you to know as well that for me, she will always be Aunt Maggie. Long history, long connection. I've known her for most of my life, and I can attest to the fact that she was a virtuous woman who loved God and others very deeply. And so a few words that she was consistent. She was funny. In fact, we had kind of a special relationship. She would say things in my ear, sometimes very sarcastic things to be funny, but we had a special relationship. She was easy to talk to and never afraid to tell me what she thought. Aunt Maggie came to my mind when I was reading recently Proverbs 14 and verse 1. It says this: "A wise woman builds her house, and God endowed her with great wisdom and strength that was needed to frame a home that was centered around the person of Jesus Christ." And I should add that in my book, and I know what I'm talking about, she literally deserved a gold medal for raising 4 characters, I mean boys, I should say. And guys, I grew up with at least 2 of you, right? So I know what I'm talking about. Went to school with you, played soccer together. And while she would certainly say it's all by God's grace, it speaks volumes that her sons are all walking with God and making a profound difference in this world for Jesus Christ. Don't miss that. As it says in 3 John 4, I don't think she had any greater joy than to know that her children walked in truth. And I should add her grandchildren as well and great-grandchildren. Incredible to see what God has done through her life. Now, I've observed over many years that Aunt Maggie was inseparable from Bruce. And I know you traveled. I know you were out and about, but the times when I saw you were always together. She wanted to be with her husband. She was an amazing helpmeet. It was obvious that she just loved being a team with you, Uncle Bruce. That was clear to me. She lived out her faith with her husband through cross-country moves. You've heard about that. Times of uncertainty with her personal health. And, of course, I knew very well about Darren's health growing up together. I remember those days. I watched you guys. I watched all of you guys as a family. And thank you for your testimony. And, of course, ministering to missionaries literally all over the world. So in her own special way, she marked my life and the lives of so many people literally around the world. Through her words of encouragement and testimony of faithfulness to the Lord, I want to say, to God be the glory. Great things he has done in and through her life, our dear sister and our dear friend. To me, Aunt Maggie.
Mi nombre es Mirta Fernández Paz de Palabra de Vida Argentina.
My name is Mirta Fernandez Paz from World Life Argentina.
Gracias Bruce y la familia por este momento.
Thank you to Bruce and the family for this moment.
Bruce y Maggie Peterson llegaron a Monte, Argentina hace 34 años.
Bruce and Maggie came to Argentina 34 years ago.
Los recibimos
We hosted them at our house.
y desde ese momento nuestras vidas y corazones quedaron unidos
And since that moment, our hearts and our families bonded
por una profunda relación de amistad y de familia.
through a profound friendship together as a family.
Perdón, quiero presentar a mi traductor, Alejandro Nuez, misionero de Palabra Vida Argentina y uno de los líderes. Hoy lo necesito. Puedo hablar inglés, pero hoy lo necesito.
She said, I want to introduce my translator, my nephew Alejandro from World Life Argentina.
Tiempos de, como decía, de una profunda relación con mi familia, mi esposo, mis hijos.
Like I was saying, a profound friendship with my family, my children.
Tiempos de mucho consejo, tiempos de diversión y tiempos de difíciles también. Que
Also, times of fun, times of advice, and good times and bad times.
que se fueron afianzando con los siguientes 33 años que siguieron viniendo a casa.
They grew even more throughout the 34 years that they would keep coming to our house.
33 años que los seguimos recibiendo y esperando cada noviembre.
34 years where we would always know that in November they would stay at our house.
Preparaba mi casa y tenía que preparar flan y comprar helado para
And I
Bruce
had
y
to
Maggie.
prepare my house. I knew I had to buy flan and also buy a lot of ice cream.
Él organizaba todo en mi casa.
And Bruce would organize everything at our house.
Organizaba fiestas, invitaba gente.
He would organize parties. He would invite people over.
Muchas memorias.
A lot of memories.
Paréntesis, los primeros años no teníamos un buen inglés, especialmente mi marido.
In
perdón.
parenthesis, the first years we didn't have a good English, especially my husband.
Y llegaban y se hablaban a los gritos entre los dos.
And Bruce would come down and they would speak to each other like screaming to try to
Y yo le decía,
make the other person
yo le decía,
understand better.
no somos sordos, pueden hablarse, tratarse de hablar, pero es más bajo.
And I would tell them, you're not deaf, you're speaking just a different language.
Dios trajo a mi vida en mis 43 años de misionera de Palabra de Vida.
God brought her to my life for all these years as a missionary of world life.
A Maggie en mis últimos 33 años, en estos últimos 33 años.
And God brought a lot of special women, but especially Maggie in these last 34 years of my ministry.
Ella fue un canal de bendición.
She was a channel of blessings.
Con su presencia,
with her presence,
con sus consejos,
with her advice,
ofrendas,
with her support,
oraciones,
her prayers,
largas charlas después de almorzar,
long talks after we had lunch or
o
dinner,
tomando té juntas en mi cocina,
or having tea together at our kitchen,
abriendo nuestros corazones mutuamente,
opening our hearts, our mutual hearts.
orgullosa de sus 4 hijos,
She was always so proud of her 4
y sus
boys
4 nueras,
and also her
de
granddaughters,
sus nietos y bisnietos, por supuesto.
and her children and grandchildren.
Pero siempre enfatizo nuevamente cómo hablaba tan bien de cada uno de ellos. Conozco muchas historias de ustedes.
And she would always be so proud to talk about her family. I have so many stories I could tell.
Y aprendí también a prepararme a ser una suegra.
And also, she prepared me to be a mother-in-law.
Y no solo fue con nosotros, con mi familia,
But not only with us, but also with our
que
family.
quedaron ligados los corazones, sino también fue con nuestro ministerio.
But also with our ministry, our hearts just bonded.
Conectado profundamente con Argentina.
Connected in an incredible way with World Life Argentina.
Con misioneros,
with missionaries,
con alumnos de institutos bíblicos.
so many students of the Bible Institute.
Paréntesis, en los últimos 33 años, Bruce y Maggie llevan todas las semanas a los alumnos casados a un almuerzo especial en el pueblo.
For the last 33 years, Bruce and Maggie would always come to Argentina and take all the married couples of the Bible Institute to have a free lunch at the town there in Monte.
Corazón para misiones.
They have a
Corazón
heart for
para
missions
misioneros.
and a heart for missionaries.
Ejemplo, cuando cumplieron sus 50 años aniversario de casados,
An example is that when they had their 50th anniversary and they were coming to Argentina,
vinieron con sus 4 hijos y sus 4 nueras.
and they brought their children and daughters-in-law,
Tuvimos un tiempo precioso.
and we had a beautiful time together.
Hicimos un banquete sorpresa
We had a surprise party, a
con
surprise
todo el
banquet
equipo de Palabra de Vida,
with all the World Life staff.
que les mandan muchos saludos, muchas oraciones, muchos abrazos.
They all send their love and their greetings today.
Cada viaje, cada visita, cada charla telefónica,
Every trip, every conversation we had on the phone,
sensibles e interesados en suplir necesidades.
they were always looking to fulfill a need in our lives,
¿Cómo orar por nosotros?
asking how they could pray for us,
Pendientes de necesidades, pero también
looking for needs, but also
nos daban, como decimos con mi esposo, beneficios marginales o extras del servicio.
like we always talk with my husband, we would get benefits that were apart from the ministry.
Muchas vidas fueran enriquecidas por sus decisiones,
So many lives were enriched because of the decisions they made.
buscando ser un canal de provisión,
Always looking to be a channel of blessing, a channel
levantando fondos,
looking to get funds,
interesando personas para misioneros,
sharing other people and making them interested in the ministry,
becas para alumnos,
looking for scholarship for students,
ropas, muebles, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera.
bringing things like that.
Maggie, yo hablo en plural, uno, como se dijo,
Plural, because there were one actually.
entrada en cada proyecto.
Maggie was always involved in every project,
Y como
just together
esposa
with Bruce.
apoyándole en todo con
As-
su presencia.
As a wife, supporting him in everything he would do.
Ejemplo de madre y abuela.
She was an example of a mother and a grandmother.
Siempre me contaba cómo quería cuidar esa relación personal con cada uno de
And
ustedes.
she would always share with me how she wanted to have some special times with the rest of
Un
her
gran
family.
ejemplo para mi vida.
What an example to my life.
Fue mujer de convicciones profundas
She was a woman of profound convictions
y firmeza para agradar a Dios.
and firmness to please God.
Testigo de conversaciones que teníamos,
And as a witness of so many conversations we had,
lo apoyaba, pero también le decía bien cuando quería.
how she would support Bruce, but she would also tell God he needed to hear.
Y muchas veces no estoy de acuerdo, Bruce. Te digo, bla, bla, bla.
And sometimes she said, I think I understand what you're saying, but I think this, and this.
Y yo me ponía del lado de Maggie.
And I would get on Maggie's side.
Entonces, él nos decía, ustedes dos juntas mucho peligro para
So
mí.
he would say, you two together is too much danger for me. I don't want you to talk that much.
Recuerdos de una lectora de muy buenos libros cristianos. Siempre venía con un libro para leer.
I also remember how she would always recommend books, good books to read.
Sí, tecnología, pero también le gustaban las joyas y puedo agregar algo más.
Yes, technology, but also she liked jewelry, and I want to add something more.
Le gustaba el shopping de zapatos y carteras en
She
Argentina.
loved to shop for shoes and bags in Argentina
Aún
and
con
purses.
el bastón íbamos a ver qué última cartera había llegado a ver si le gustaba.
Even with her cane, she would walk in downtown Buenos Aires buying shoes.
Su púlpito fue la influencia e interés genuino en misioneras de una forma muy silenciosa.
But her pulpit was how she always wanted to invest in the life of so many missionaries.
Su última visita en noviembre pasado,
Her last visit in November of
10
last year,
días,
for a couple of days, 10 days,
fue increíble e
it
inolvidable.
was incredible and unforgettable.
La vi muy débil físicamente, pero fuerte interiormente.
I saw her weak in her strength, but so strong in her faith.
Aún en su debilidad, no tuvo miedo de viajar 10 horas hasta llegar a Argentina.
Even in her weakness, she was able to travel for 10 hours to get to Argentina.
Bruce y Andrés viajaron a Paraguay a hacer ministerio y se quedó conmigo 3 días sola.
Bruce and Andres traveled to Paraguay for a couple of days, and she stayed by herself with me at the house.
La cuidé, pero también disfruté mucho de charlas y consejos que
I
necesitaba.
watch over her, but I also enjoy just talking to her and getting her advice.
Me siento privilegiada por Dios
I feel privileged, and I thank God
por haber traído a mi vida a Maggie
for
Peterson.
bringing into my life Maggie Peterson.
Y quiero terminar con testimonios de algunas otras que me dijeron una palabra de Maggie, no quiero dejar de decirlo.
And I want to finish with other testimonies of other people that were very close to Maggie,
Para la gloria de Dios.
for the glory of God.
México, Irma Di Gilio.
From Mexico, Irma Di Chilio.
Maggie fue como madre, amiga, secretaria.
She said Maggie was like a mother and even like a friend and a secretary as well.
Corregía las cartas para el inglés para poder enviarlas a sus sustentadores.
I would send her my letters for my supporters, and she would look over the letters and correct the grammar.
Pendiente de sus necesidades.
Always looking for our needs.
Perú, Graciela Matos.
From Peru, Graciela Matos.
Maggie, mujer sencilla y sin vueltas.
Maggie, what a simple woman, but what a godly woman.
Hospedadora.
Always hosting us.
Siempre atendiendo a ellos, preguntando por sus hijos y nietos.
Always asking for our children and our grandchildren.
Paraguay, Brenda Acevedo.
And from Paraguay, Brenda Acevedo.
Maggie, mujer de Dios, que en pocas palabras ayudó a transformar vidas de mujeres para Cristo.
Maggie, a woman of God that changed so many lives for the glory of God.
Ecuador, Ana González.
From Ecuador, Ana González.
Agradece por la disposición de comunicarse aún en su pobre inglés con ella.
I thank God because I could always talk to her even I don't speak English very well.
Siempre interesada por la familia y preguntando por sus hijos.
Always interested in our family and asking for our children.
Bolivia, Noemí Lelia.
From Bolivia, Noemí Lelia.
Lo resume con Proverbios 12:4. La mujer virtuosa es corona de su marido.
She said that she was just like the woman from Proverbs, where it says that she's a crown to her husband.
Define a Maggie con este versículo porque acompañó siempre a su esposo.
And she defines Maggie in that way because she was always there for her husband.
Apoyo y compañera de carácter piadoso.
What a support and what a godly character.
Una huella que dejó en su corazón.
She left a mark in our hearts.
Y hay muchísimas más misioneras.
And there's so many other women around the world.
Sudamérica, Centroamérica, Europa, África, muchas más.
In South America, Central America, Europe and Asia, so many other missionary women.
Y puedo decir que porque Dios fue primero en su vida,
And I can say because God was first in her life,
se enfocó en otros.
she could focus on other people.
Esposo, familia,
Her
misiones, misioneras.
Husband, her children, her missionaries around the world.
Y nos dejó pasos a seguir como mujeres.
And she, as a woman, she left steps for us to follow.
Proverbios 31:30b.
Proverbs 31:30 says, "But a woman that fears the Lord shall be praised."
Y el siguiente.
31.
Sí.
Give her of the fruits of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates.
Para la gloria de Dios.
For the glory of God.
Dios nos dio el privilegio de tenerla, pero también nos da la esperanza de que un día vamos a estar juntas en el cielo.
God gave us the privilege of having Maggie, and He also gives us the hope of being with her again for eternity.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
You'll notice I'm not following any songs or slide presentations.
A few years ago, my brother Daryl was speaking to someone who knew all of us boys, but he did not know the birth order. So he asked Daryl, if Darren was the baby of the family. Daryl's answer was, Darren is the youngest, but Dwight is the baby. The fact of the matter is, he's right. I was, and I still am a baby. Or to put it another way, I've always been a mama's boy. But I say that not so that you can know or understand me, but so that you can understand the greatness of my mom. You see, who I could have been is not who I became. It was because of my mom. And the characteristics that could have dominated my life did not. And it's because of my mom. You see, my mom helped me become a man. I've never been the stereotypical manly man. I cried a lot. I was overly affectionate. I got my feelings hurt easily. I felt emotions very deeply. I could have easily become soft, maybe even someone that somebody would call a sissy. But I did not because of my mom. She did it by embracing who I was. She never responded to me as though those realities were somehow wrong or needed to be controlled or hidden. She valued what I did. She valued what I loved. I watched her allow Bonnie to assume more and more of the role she had been playing as our relationship continued to grow. She never coddled me. God has chosen to allow grief to be a significant part of my story. And through all of that, my mom never coddled me. She would cry with me. She would hold me. She would validate my pain, but she would never allow me to wallow in it. She did it by never seeing me as a victim. She never allowed me to feel sorry for myself. She would point me to what I needed to learn or how I needed to grow. In fact, when I was being a jerk at the Word of Life Bible Institute and Bonnie broke up with me, my mother's response was, "What's the matter? Didn't you think she'd ever break up with the Dwight Peterson?" She challenged me to never let anyone or anything break me or control me. She did it by always pointing me to God's agenda. She would always point me to the God who allowed or orchestrated the events I was facing and helped me see it, how it could grow me and allow me to influence others. But as significant, she helped my dad help me to become a man. You see, my dad is anything but a baby and anything but a mama's boy. He didn't have my emotions. He didn't hurt the way I did. He was not overtly affectionate. He was not anything like me. But somehow my dad became the single greatest influence in my life. In fact, at each of those times of grief, it was my dad who played the major role in how I responded and how it grew me. She did it by helping me see my dad as my hero. She supported his decisions and responses towards me, never going against his advice or his perception of what was going on in my life. She talked him up and spoke about what a great husband and father he was. She would explain to me why he was doing something or saw something a certain way. And she modeled allowing Dad to lead and disciple her. She also did it by helping my dad understand who I was and what I needed. I never actually saw this, but I know it happened. There were times my dad and I would have hard, painful conversations, and I would walk away from them discouraged, hurt, confused, and sometimes angry. But he would always return, sometimes a day or two later, sometimes seconds later, to reframe the conversation and to make it significant. I remember in junior high, I got in trouble, and my dad told me if I didn't like it, I could live someplace else. So I began to pack. Later that day, he came in to tell me he loved me, would be devastated if I left, and asked if we could spend some time talking. I'm sure that was a result of one of those conversations Daryl said none of us ever saw. When Bonnie gave birth to a little girl that we did not come home from the hospital, I called my dad just before heading to the funeral home to make arrangements. He told me not to allow my emotions to get the best of me and spend money that I did not have or should not spend. We hung up, and a few seconds later, I got another phone call from my dad to tell me to do whatever I want. He would help buy it. I'm sure there were countless conversations that my parents had that resulted in the role my dad has always played in my life. You see, my mom never wrote a book. She never preached a message. She never led a ministry or a school. She just influenced me and 3 generations of those who do or someday will. Her influence as a result of committing to be a wife and a mom first literally changed the lives of countless people around the world. Proverbs says she watches over the activities of her household and is never idle. Her sons rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. Many women are capable, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord will be praised. Give her the reward of her labor and let her works praise her at the city gates. Today we do just that. And right now, her sons, her husband, and the rest of her family rise and call her blessed.
The one word that describes my mom is truthfulness.
Someone who would always make time to spend time together.
Happy. Love. If I were to describe Grandma in one word, I would use the word present. Her love.
Faithful.
Supportive. Always happy to see me.
Caring.
It's compassionate.
Would be honest.
Probably be perseverance.
Unconditional love.
Would be friend.
Flexible.
Willy sweet.
Present.
Be classy.
Faithfulness. Trustworthy because she was so honest.
Tough. I think my mom may be the toughest person I ever met in my life.
Tough, but also very tender.
One word to describe her: faithful.
Determined.
Devoted.
Sacrificing for others.
Confident.
Be generous.
Compassionate.
I would use loving.
The one word I would use to describe her is resilient. You could knock her down, but she got right back up.
I'm definitely gonna miss Grandma's lipstick kisses. I knew every time I came into a room she was in, and every time I left a room she was in. I was gonna get a kiss somewhere on my face.
What I will miss most about her is her godliness.
The way her presence always lingered long after she was had gone back to Dallas or gone back to New York or Florida. She had a way of staying in your car, and you would find, as soon as you got back in the car after Mom had been there, you'd smell her perfume.
Sharing BLT sandwiches at Pickens with her and watching Anne of Green Gables.
Our one-on-one time and listening to all her stories about her past and how far she's come.
What I will miss most about Grandma is sitting together over Christmas, drinking coffee, eating sugar cookies, just being cozy on the couch together and spending time together talking about the kids.
One thing I will miss most about Grandma is just seeing her with Grandpa when we go to visit Screen Lake.
the way she was invested in our family. She always wanted to know all about our kids and grandkids, and I knew that she was praying for them and really took an interest in each of them, and I'm going to miss talking to her about them.
I'm definitely going to miss going to visit her and Grandpa over here in Florida and spending time with them, spending time with her and talking, helping them with all their devices and technology.
The thing I'm going to miss most is our phone calls, catching up on life, and FaceTiming with her forehead and the ceiling.
I'm gonna miss spending time with her, talking with her, just being with her, her smile, her laugh, just a lot of things.
I will miss her voice.
I will miss her life and her testimony. I will miss the way that she pursued Jesus and ministered to countless people all over the world. And I'm hoping that my family can do the same as we journey on.
I'll miss the most the fact that no matter what was going on in her life, when we visited or when I saw her or talked to her on the telephone, she wanted to know about me. She wanted to know about my life, about the kids, about how things were going. And she always listened, she was always on my side, and she always had advice for me.
The thing I'll miss most about Grandma is the simple moments and the memories that I have with her. Whether we were eating kettle chips and salami sandwiches while we watched sports with Grandpa, or we went and got our nails done.
One of the things that I will miss was all of her extensive knowledge of all Apple products.
Grandma cannot be replaced, and I love her with all my heart. Grandma, we miss you.
I like you so much.
I love to hear Grandma's laugh.
I love how she smells. Her smile.
I think what I'll miss the most is I always knew when Dad was traveling, because Mom would call about 4 or 5 times a day and text an additional 3 or 4 times.
What I'll miss the most about Mom is that as I studied the genealogy, she was always very excited to learn what I had discovered, and it was always fun to call her and share that.
Her just mothering me. Even after I graduated, got married, even as a grandfather, she never stopped being my mom.
What I'll miss most from my mom is her presence. It's been amazing since she's been gone, seeing different things that remind me of her. Something as simple as turtle candies to conversations to thinking of something that she'd get a kick out of or that she would appreciate. So I'll really miss her presence.
Well, honey, I think we just viewed your 62 years of legacy. I love you. See you soon.
When alarmed by the fury of the restless sea, towering waves before you roll. At the end of doubt and peril, is eternity. Though fear and conflict seize your soul, just think of stepping on shore and finding it heaven, of touching a hand and finding it God's, of breathing new air and finding it celestial, of waking up in glory and finding it home. When surrounded by the blackness of the darkest night, oh, how lonely death can be. At the end of this long tunnel is a shining light, for death is swallowed up in victory. Just think of stepping on shore and finding it heaven, of touching a hand and finding it God's, of breathing new air and finding it celestial, of waking up in glory and finding it home.
Just before I close in prayer, I want to remind you that there's going to be a light lunch in the ministry center. Is that what it's called? Gym, up in the gym up here. And you're all invited to come. I'd also like to dismiss the family to go ahead and make their way up there, and you can greet the family up there. Go ahead. And then I'll close in prayer. Isaac, Mom would be really proud of you today. Had you not done that, she would have had a conversation with you. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the love shown on the cross of Calvary that make people like my mom possible. To take a little girl who grew up in a very different family than the one she built, growing up in a very difficult financial situation, yet being able to have a vision with my dad of how to use finances to touch people around the world, all because of Calvary, all because of the work you did in her heart. And I pray that all of us would walk away from here today with a renewed commitment to live our lives that honor you, that honor the work that you've done, that we too can live a legacy. I pray especially for my brothers and my dad and our families, that we would continue to honor Mom's legacy by living the way that she would want. And I pray for the people that are here, that they would do likewise. Thank you for this church. Thank you for their willingness to provide the food for us. I pray that as we all move up to that room, that the fellowship we have would be significant. We'd leave here, again, with an overwhelming sense of your grace and goodness in our lives, and a greater commitment to honor you and to reach the world around us who desperately needs what my mom had. In Jesus' name, amen.